All right, so how do you actually play PortalVR? Well, first I'm going to show you how you hold your devices while you play, and then I'm going to teach you how to use the controller properly. So, PortalVR is meant to be installed on an Android tablet or phone, and you hold that in your left hand as you play. So you're going to hold it like this, and you're going to notice that I'm holding it so that the camera, if I'm looking down at the phone, is oriented off to the right, and I'm holding it in landscape mode, like this. So off to the right, I see the camera, and I'm holding it in a landscape orientation. For a tablet, that can be a little bit tricky, so I recommend either holding it over like this in a grip, and you can again see that I'm keeping the camera off to my right, or if you get a pop socket, which I highly recommend, you can hold it between your thumb and index finger, and that makes it a lot more comfortable to hold for longer sessions. So let's talk about tracking. The way PortalVR works is each device, your display device in your left hand and your controller in your right hand, both have cameras and use those cameras to track. And so it's really important you think about both what the cameras can see and can't see as you play. First of all, you definitely don't want to hold your device so that your fingers are covering the camera. Then nothing is going to work, and that's part of why we hold it the way we do, where you're keeping the camera off to the right and you're holding it in your left hand. But not only is it a problem if the camera can't see anything, it's also a problem if the camera can't see much. So for example, you want to avoid playing PortalVR where you're holding either camera up against a wall or against a desk where they're not going to be able to see much and be able to use that feature information from the scene to track. So I highly recommend if you're playing at something like a desk that you actually turn your chair around and face into your room so that the cameras get a nice big view of your surrounding environment. That's going to be the best way to get the best tracking. All right, let's talk about the controller. The first thing to know about the controller is it works exactly the same on both iOS and Android. The next thing to know is how to hold it right. You don't want to hold it like you're taking a selfie or using a TV remote. You actually want to hold it at an angle like this, almost like a pistol grip. And you want to make sure your thumb is free to move across the entire surface of the phone while your fingers stabilize it. The first thing to know is that tapping on this side or this side of this line will switch which controller in the game you're controlling. So this will control the right controller, and this will control the left controller. You can just toggle back and forth like this. The next thing to know is these are your axis controls. So if you use these finger thumbsticks, that's going to drive the axis stick on the corresponding controller. And then you have your trigger and your action buttons. So trigger is right here, and then your Y/X button is here, or your A/B button is here, depending on which controller is active. And then finally you have your grip down here. So your grip can either be pressed and held and then let go, or if you want a grip lock, you just tap it, and that will lock the grip. And finally, down here in the corner, you have your system and menu button. So if you hit the S, that's the system button. And if you switch to the right controller and hit the lines, that's the menu button. One more thing is to notice these adjustment handles, which can be used to adjust these lines that basically define the regions. The goal here is that you want to be able to hold the controller at an angle like this, and then use this part of your thumb to get this side, and the tip to get the other, and the tip to be able to hit these buttons here. So you can see if I adjust the lines just right, I can kind of blindly use the controller like this and just hit these buttons here without any need to look at the controller itself. So if I tighten this up a little bit, I end up being able to use the edge of my thumb for this one. So it's up to you to decide how to control these, but just calibrate it so it feels comfortable so that you can use the controller without looking at it while you play. All right, here we are in PortalVR in the Unity XR demo. And the first thing to know is that the controller has a tracking tag in the top right. And so if you're noticing that your controller is missing, you have to make sure that the camera on your display device occasionally can see the tag. So you just bring it in front, and then it'll pop right in. Now, as I mentioned, you can switch between controllers by tapping on the left or the right side of the line. Let's pick up this block. So if I click the grip, I can grip lock. If I just tap and hold, I can let go to release. Now I'll pick up this weapon, bring it to me, and then just start shooting this target. Let's talk about arm stretch mode. So right now it's hard for me to reach this watering can. Now of course in this game I don't need to actually reach over to it, but in a lot of games you have to actually get your hand all the way to an object to pick it up. So if you press the volume up key on the controller, then it engages stretch and aim mode. The stretch in stretch and aim mode means that you're going to stretch your reach. So here you can see I can reach a lot farther than if I could without it turned on. And then I can reach over here, more of this plant, and come back. To turn off stretch mode, I just press volume up again. And now my arm is back to normal. When I toggle the volume up key, I also engage aiming mode. So here I'll do it again. Now, as before, I can stretch, but if I bring the controller behind the display, I now aim with the display. And I can actually adjust things a little bit with my controller, but I'm aiming with my tablet. And so you can see I can now easily target faraway objects. This is really handy for keyboards or UI elements in the game. All right, here I am in another experience called Open Blocks to show you a few more techniques. In this experience, I can place blocks with my trigger button, and in my left hand I have this palette, and the colors are on the back and a little hard to reach. So I'm going to show you a technique called quick placement. We already know that if I tap on the left side, I can switch to the left controller, and I tap on the right side, I can switch to the right. But I can also quickly move the left controller and not switch entirely. If I press and hold the left side and then move and then release, I can just move the controller to somewhere else. So I press, move, and release. Again, I'll do it again. Press, move, and release. This is a great way to be able to quickly flip this over to the colors. So I have my right controller active. I press, I flip, I release, and now I can point and click on a color. Now I'm going to show you dual-handed mode. By default, I'm just driving one hand and I switch to the other. But if I press the down volume key, I switch into dual-handed mode, and now I'm driving both hands. And by bringing them together like this, they get closer, and if I move off to the right, they get farther apart. If I press the down volume again, I go into another dual-handed mode where they move in the opposite direction like this. In Open Blocks, I can zoom in and zoom out by doing a stretch motion like this with the grip button. So I just switch into the second mode, and now it's very easy for me to do that. Just click the volume down again to go back into this mode, and one more time to get back into single mode. Two more quick tips when it comes to tracking. First, when PortalVR starts up on the display device or the controller, it's helpful to hold the device still for a moment and then tilt it a bit so that the camera can get a nice clean view of your environment, and then start moving the device around for gameplay. This makes it so that the device can start up its tracking system and stabilize it before you start moving it around, which will lead to much better tracking for the rest of the play session. The second tip is that if you notice that the scene is moving or the tracking system is becoming destabilized, take a moment to just stop moving and check that your cameras are not being blocked, and then give it a moment to try to recalibrate and reground itself into the room. This can happen sometimes, but it's usually corrected quickly if you just stop moving and ensure the camera can see the rest of the room.